At the association headquarters, the atmosphere was heavy in President Han Seo-eun's office. She was waiting for an answer, and her expression made it clear that her patience had run out a long time ago. Across the room, Baek Soo-won just sighed. He already knew the lecture that was coming, but instead of showing any kind of remorse, the young man seemed more bored than regretful. The president's patience had finally reached its limit. While Soo-won complained about the pain, she scolded him for creating a mess instead of helping the esper assigned to him. In this world, there were people with supernatural abilities, known as espers. However, to keep their powers stable, they depended on guides, and physical contact was the most effective way to guide them. And that was exactly the problem. For Soo-won, the idea of physical contact was simply unbearable. He snapped, yelling that he couldn't take it anymore and that he wouldn't be a guide anymore. The mere memory of what was expected of him sent him into a panic, a feeling of revulsion that he couldn't control. Amid the crisis, he kept repeating how much he hated it all. But the president interrupted him, stating that this would be his last mission. She then presented a new proposal, a request for in-person guiding, specifically for an S-class guide. Soo-won didn't understand. He had just said he was going to quit, but she kept insisting on it. He refused on the spot, saying he wasn't interested. The president, however, remained calm, as if she expected this reaction. The president was unfazed by the refusal. With a cutting calm, she began to deconstruct Soo-won's confidence piece by piece. She reminded him that he wasn't in a position to choose anything. The woman listed the truths he didn't want to face. He was broken from fighting instead of guiding, and he always spent what he earned paying other people's hospital bills. Each word was a direct hit. With an air of superiority, she delivered the checkmate, making it clear that she knew his entire financial situation. The choice, in the end, was his. Soo-won had no way to refute it. Everything the president said was the purest and most painful truth. He felt the weight of reality crushing his determination. There was no other way out. Later, squeezed into a crowded bus, Soo-won reflected on his decision. He would do that job, but it would be his last. After that, he would really quit the guide life. The traffic was chaotic, and he wondered what kind of person insisted on scheduling a meeting in the middle of rush hour, only sending the location. Suddenly, the bus braked sharply, throwing all the passengers forward and further increasing Soo-won's stress. He took out his cell phone to check the meeting address one more time, just to be sure where he needed to get off. That's when he realized something terrible. The meeting point wasn't at some stop. It was right there, where the bus was stopped in the middle of traffic. Panicked, he tried to turn around in the crowd to get to the door, but there was minimal space. In the midst of the confusion and crowding, the cell phone slipped from his hand and fell to the floor of the bus. Desperate, he lunged to try to pick up the device, excusing himself and begging them to wait a moment. As he tried to pick up the cell phone, Soo-won felt something stopping him. A man was holding him by his clothes, commenting on the accident with a tone of pure mockery. The stranger showed no remorse. On the contrary, he complained that the contact was also disgusting for him and accused Soo-won of rubbing himself first. That's when Soo-won heard the sound he feared most, the crack of his cell phone screen breaking under someone's foot. Anger boiled inside him. On impulse, he grabbed the man's wrist with all his strength, demanding an answer for that audacity. But the blonde man barely flinched. He just looked at Soo-won's hand with cold contempt, as if he were dealing with a tantruming child. Soo-won's frustration turned into something darker. A forced and strange smile appeared on his face, a mask for the fury he felt. Inside, he cursed the man, promising himself that that crazy pervert would pay for what he did. But suddenly, his anger turned to panic. He realized that the bus doors were closing. Too late. As the blonde man calmly got off, Soo-won could only watch, trapped inside the vehicle that was starting to move. The stranger stepped onto the sidewalk, completely indifferent to the chaos he left behind. Unable to do anything else, Soo-won left one last message for the man, a gesture of pure frustration and contempt. And so, the bus departed, taking Soo-won away from his destination and the man who had just ruined his day. Despite all the trouble, he finally arrived at the job site. Exhausted, Soo-won collapsed on the couch of the luxurious residence, trying to catch his breath. He looked around, impressed and confused by the luxury of the place. Who would live here? And why were they calling him for a job in a house like this? While he was thinking about it, a notification floated in the air, warning that the young master would arrive soon and asking him to make himself comfortable. Trying to relax before his new boss arrived, Suwon poured himself a drink. He needed to calm down after the chaotic incident on the bus. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching the room. For a brief moment, he managed to forget the stress, enjoying the tranquility of that luxurious house. Meanwhile, the man from the bus ended a call. He seemed annoyed, insisting that he really didn't need what they offered him. The sound of the door opening caught Suwon's attention. He assumed the young master had finally arrived. Politely, Suwon stood up to greet his new employer, preparing a formal greeting. But the person who entered was not a stranger. It was the same blonde man who had broken his cell phone and humiliated him earlier. The shock was so great that Suwon dropped his drink. His world seemed to stop for a moment. To make matters worse, the blonde man recognized him first and with a mocking smile called him the bus pervert. Suwon couldn't believe it. The guy who tormented him was, in fact, the young master he was supposed to serve. His mind was in knots. How was that possible? Of all the people in the world, it had to be him. The confusion quickly turned into mutual accusation. They pointed at each other, the recognition sealing the fate of that encounter. The reality of that bizarre situation finally seemed to dawn on them. The young master turned away, making his contempt clear. He stated that he had a rule not to guide perverts like Suwon. Suwon sat down, anger and humiliation weighing on him. His first day of work had already turned into a complete nightmare. But Suwon wasn't the type to accept an insult in silence. The humiliation quickly turned into a silent rage, and he turned to face the man who was provoking him. The young master noticed the change in attitude and, with a mocking tone, commented that it was a pity. He seemed to be enjoying the situation. With a condescending smile, he continued the provocation, clearly testing the limits of Suwon's patience. Suwon remained silent, just watching. He wasn't going to give the other the satisfaction of an explosive reaction. At least, not yet. The contained anger finally overflowed. The tension in the air became heavy as Suwon prepared to respond in kind. The young master realized he had gone too far, but his arrogant smile didn't disappear. He seemed curious to see what would happen. Suwon stood up suddenly, the decision stamped on his face. He wasn't going to stand there listening to accusations anymore. With a defiant expression, he decided to play the same game. If the young master wanted a pervert, he'd have one. Only, at the exact moment when the tension reached its peak, reality hit him like a punch. Something was terribly wrong. A sudden phone call interrupted everything. On the other end of the line, someone warned that the compatibility was almost complete and ordered him to go back inside, leaving Suwon completely lost. Without patience to wait, the young master simply grabbed him by the hood and began to drag him by force, ignoring his protests. Inside, a document was already prepared on the table. It was a guiding contract, whatever that meant. Forced to sit down, Suwon stared at the contract with frustration. The situation had completely spiraled out of his control. The young master approached, stating that, since things had reached that point, it was better to resolve everything at once. He held out the pen, giving a direct order. Suwon should sign so they could start this guiding as soon as possible. With no other choice, Suwon finally signed the contract. He had no way to escape that situation anymore. As soon as he finished, he pushed the document back. He then prepared for what was to come, saying that they better start with this guiding soon. The young master watched everything with a victorious smile, satisfied that he had gotten what he wanted. Without wasting time, the young master began the process, touching Suwon's chest to feel his energy. Suwon felt a deep disgust. He didn't want this, and found the young master's gaze repulsive. But the young master was surprised. Suwon's energy was at an S level, and he didn't understand how he had never heard of someone so powerful. Despite Suwon's defiant attitude, the young master could feel the immense energy flowing. That kid was, without a doubt, a rare case. Suddenly, Suwon broke off the contact, saying that was enough for the day. He had fulfilled his part of the forced agreement. Sometime later, Suwon was already somewhere else, waiting for someone on the street. He looked around, impatient. The person he was waiting to meet seemed to be late, until finally he spotted the person. Relief and irritation mixed on his face, and the figure that appeared was, to say the least, flashy. Leaning against an old car, the man seemed completely unconcerned with the world. The man commented with irony that he had borrowed a nice car just to pick up Suwon. He then offered his sunglasses to Suwon in a theatrical way, as if he were making a marriage proposal. A complete clown. It all started like a flash, a memory of a moment that should have been happy. A grand celebration with balloons, flowers, and even a giant diamond ring. But the memory clashed with reality, and Suwon's face twisted in pure shock and revulsion. That day was nothing like it seemed. At that moment, the young master hugged him in front of everyone, with a banner declaring that they would live a beautiful life together. A perfect staging for the cameras. Only, amidst the applause, the young master whispered the cruel truth in his ear, reminding Suwon that he was the fool who didn't read the contract properly. The car ride back to the present was as chaotic as his thoughts. The young master was driving recklessly, not caring about anything. The combination of the horrible memory with the dangerous driving churned Suwon's stomach. He could barely hold himself back from vomiting. When he finally stopped, the young master still had the audacity to ask for a thank you kiss, as if all of this was a normal date. Suwon pulled away, completely disgusted with the proposal and with the situation he was in. He then confronted him, asking why he insisted on doing guiding only through radiation. Suwon made it clear that he felt disgusted by physical contact with someone he felt nothing for. With a provocative smile, the young master replied that Suwon didn't seem so disgusted before, implying that he had even liked it. The vulgar comment caught Suwon by surprise, leaving him speechless and visibly shaken. As a final insult, the young master threw the lollipop he was sucking in his direction. He then said goodbye, telling Suwon to play with it if he got bored and that he was going to work. Suwon stood still, watching the old car disappear into the distance, leaving behind only a cloud of dust and humiliation. But the humiliation quickly turned into fury. With a glint in his eyes, he crushed the lollipop in his hand. His patience was over. After the humiliation, Suwon tried to calm down outside. The anger still burned, but he needed to put his thoughts in order before facing what lay ahead. Upon entering, the first thing he noticed was the absurd luxury of the house. It was the kind of place that screamed power and money, very different from anything he knew. And with the luxury came the prejudice. Suwon already imagined the kind of person who lived there, and his thoughts were not positive at all. Suddenly, a friendly lady greeted him, relieved that the director was finally receiving proper guidance. Suwon didn't understand who she was referring to. The housekeeper, all happy, explained that the young master was the grandson of the famous director Gong from the Gongmyong group, a figure who has been in the news a lot lately. She spoke with genuine pride, as if she were family herself. The information hit Suwon hard. Now, many things about the young master's arrogant behavior were starting to make sense. He remembered why he was there and how a guy with so much money and power could be refusing help. Something was very wrong. Later, when being taken to what the housekeeper said was his room, Suwon had the worst possible surprise. The young master was already there, lying on the bed as if he owned the place, and questioned why he should leave. He then revealed the plan. That was also his room. From that moment on, they would share the same space. Suwon confirmed his suspicions. He knew the guy was crazy, but he didn't imagine he would go this far. The young master just smiled, enjoying the discomfort and anger he saw on Suwon's face. Without saying a word, Suwon turned and headed towards the door. He wasn't going to stay there. He decided he would sleep on the couch or anywhere else, away from that man. But Suwon's frustration was cut short before it even began. He stopped, processing the scene unfolding before him. Someone had already arrived first. The young master was already lying comfortably in bed, with a teasing smile as if waiting for him. He patted the space next to him, inviting Suwon to join. His gaze was sharp and direct. Then came the warning. The young master declared that there was an imaginary line on the bed, and if Suwon crossed it, he would die. The threat left Suwon paralyzed on the floor. The young master just watched, amused by the reaction. Suwon couldn't believe the childishness of the situation. The man was really treating a death threat like a child's game, using his own clothes to mark the territory. He felt completely ridiculous, but he didn't have much choice. Defeated by the bizarreness of the night, Suwon eventually gave in. Later, when he was finally trying to sleep, the young master started calling him, asking if he was already asleep. Suwon deeply regretted not just insisting on going to the couch. The teasing seemed endless. The situation worsened when the young master started using pet names, testing the limits of Suwon's patience. And that limit was reached. Suwon exploded, yelling at him to stop calling him dear. However, instead of a fight, the young master's response was a sudden kiss on the cheek. Suwon froze, completely shocked. He couldn't understand what had just happened, only feeling the mark left on his face. With a teasing smile, the young master justified the kiss as a simple family tradition. A goodnight custom, according to him, while touching Suwon's face. He seemed to enjoy the other's confusion and shock immensely, finding his reaction absolutely hilarious. Only Suwon's patience had a limit, and that limit had just been crossed with a well-aimed punch. The accumulated anger exploded all at once. Suwon didn't hold back, venting all his frustration on the young master and telling him to just die right there. The aggression didn't stop at punches. He continued the attack, showing that there would be no more tolerance for the provocations. But the young master's reaction wasn't one of pain. On the contrary, he seemed to be enjoying it. Each blow only made him more satisfied. It finally dawned on Suwon. That bizarre reaction left him completely paralyzed and disgusted. Unable to process the situation, Suwon's only reaction was to run away. He blamed himself for having trusted, even for a second, that man. Meanwhile, the young master stayed behind, still feeling the adrenaline of the moment coursing through his veins. He seemed totally satisfied with the result of his provocation, but something strange was with him, a small creature that watched everything. Suddenly, the environment around Suwon changed. A dense darkness began to envelop him, and he felt the air lacking in his lungs. Not understanding what was happening, he tried to fight, but it was as if he was trapped by an invisible force. Panic took over as he wondered what the hell was going on. The fear turned into pure terror. Reality unraveled before his eyes, and all he could do was scream. And then he saw the cause of his dread. A ghostly version of the young master was upon him. Desperate, Suwon could only beg for help, but it was already too late. The young master grabbed him, and amidst the panic, Suwon realized that there was nowhere left to run. Terror paralyzed Suwon. He couldn't understand the expression of the man holding him, a bizarre calmness that contrasted with his absolute despair. To the young man's horror, the young master seemed to be enjoying the moment, snuggling against him as if nothing strange was happening. And then, it clicked. This wasn't an attack, it was something much, much worse. The situation was so absurd that Suwon was completely unresponsive, in a state of shock. The next morning, reality proved to be even stranger. The young master was in the living room, casually tending to the injuries Suwon had caused him the night before. Suwon tried to ignore him in the kitchen, but the other didn't make it easy, making provocations. Annoyed, Suwon just told him to shut up. To worsen his mood, upon opening the refrigerator in search of something to eat, he found it almost empty, except for a single leftover. He turned around, confused, and realized that the whole house was a mess. There was no food, the housekeeper wasn't there. Whoa, what had happened? Only then did Suwon notice the true scale of the chaos. The apartment was completely destroyed. The young master, in turn, explained that he sent the housekeeper on vacation. The young master's calmness amidst that mess was the last straw. Suwon's patience had finally reached its limit, but the other one seemed to be enjoying the situation, questioning why all the anger, as if destroying his own house was the most normal thing in the world. Every gesture of his was a calculated provocation, testing Suwon's limits and making it clear who was in control of that bizarre situation. And that was enough. Suwon exploded, calling him a pervert. The facade of indifference finally crumbled, giving way to pure fury. But reality came knocking in the form of a notification. An astronomical bill for property damage, a reminder that his actions had very real consequences. Amidst the tension, the discussion returned to the original problem. Pressed by Suwon, the young master finally admitted that he ate the last portion of food left. With the fridge empty, the young master's solution was simple. He ordered Suwon to go grocery shopping. At the limit of his sanity, Suwon seemed to accept the task, but there was something strange in his eyes. A calmness that didn't match the situation at all. It turns out that the young master himself left. From inside the apartment, Suwon watched him walk away, finally getting a moment of peace. Alone, he decided it was time to take action. Enough of being the victim in that completely chaotic house. He then grabbed what appeared to be a vacuum cleaner, determined to clean up the place, no matter how unpleasant the task was. That moment of tranquility was all he needed to prepare for what was to come. But the young master returned much sooner than expected, carrying a bag. He was surprised to see Suwon and asked why he was already back. The question didn't make the slightest sense to Suwon, who hadn't even left the house. He was completely confused by the situation. Ignoring the confusion, the young master proudly showed what he had bought. It was a bunch of chips, instant noodles, and, to Suwon's surprise, a dried fish. It wasn't exactly a normal grocery shopping trip. He then grabbed the fish, all excited, explaining that it was a type of amulet to ward off the bad luck that he felt existed between the two of them. It was a bizarre attempt to purify the environment, as if a simple fish could solve the mess he himself created. But suddenly, his smile disappeared, giving way to a more serious expression as he held the makeshift amulet. That was the last straw. Without warning, Suwon snatched the fish from his hand forcefully. His patience had finally come to an end. With the fish broken in his hands, Suwon made a declaration. He decided that, on that day, he would finally transform that chaotic being into a real human being. Suwon's plan to humanize the young master began with a simple task: going grocery shopping. And, to ensure the lesson was learned, he made the boy carry everything himself. The young master, who had probably never exerted himself in his life, was already at his limit, being practically dragged through the market aisles. Back at the apartment, the re-education continued. Suwon put him to clean the floor, supervising the work with a scolding on the tip of his tongue. The boy was completely exhausted. A life of luxury and pampering didn't prepare him for the slightest bit of hard work. Seeing the young master passed out on the table, Suwon commented with irony that anyone who saw the scene would think he was being tortured. Despite the suffering, the result was undeniable. Thanks to the forced labor, the house finally looked like a clean and habitable place. But there was no time for rest. Suwon was clear. If he still had the breath to complain, then he had plenty of energy to set the table for dinner. He was unyielding. The lesson of the day was not over yet, and there would be no slack. There was a certain satisfaction in Suwon's eyes. He was finally in control of the situation, turning the tables on the one who tormented him. However, the humiliation was too much for the young master. The anger finally exploded inside him. The explosive reaction took Suwon by surprise for a moment, who wasn't expecting that outburst. But out of nowhere, the young master simply got up and grabbed the rice and silverware as if nothing had happened. The change in attitude was so sudden that it left Suwon completely confused. The boy now seemed strangely happy to obey. That day of training had exhausted not only the young master, but also Suwon himself. The energy to maintain that tough facade came at a price. Lying on the sofa, he reflected on the events. Perhaps dealing with that boy was much more complicated and unpredictable than he imagined. After the strange change in behavior, the young master began to eat the meal in silence, as if nothing had happened. He seemed to be really enjoying it, savoring each spoonful with a satisfaction that made Suwon even more suspicious. Suwon just watched, trying to understand what was going on in the head of that unpredictable boy. Time passed, and a month went by in that strange routine. One night, however, the young master seemed to be unwell, with an expression of pain, as if he had a fever. Suwon was relaxing in the bath when he was caught by surprise. The young master appeared out of nowhere, complaining that he hadn't been attended to when he called. His sudden appearance and proximity left Suwon completely embarrassed and unsure of what to do. In an impulse to regain control, Suwon grabbed the young man's hand, trying to push him away. The whole situation was so bizarre that the tension broke, leaving only a moment of pure embarrassment. On another day, Suwon went out to meet a friend at a restaurant. During the conversation, his friend commented on how some espers are strange and even seem to enjoy being insulted or mistreated. Those words hit Suwon hard. The description was all too familiar. The friend continued, theorizing that espers' heightened senses make them seek much stronger emotions and stimuli than normal. With each word, the truth about the young master became clearer, and Suwon couldn't take the pressure. His friend even had to call him back to reality. It finally clicked. The young master's behavior wasn't just random. It was a pattern that fit that description perfectly. And Suwon had no idea how to deal with it. Suwon was silent, processing the information. His friend's theory about espers made frightening sense and explained a lot about the young master's behavior. His friend, unaware of the turmoil in Suwon's head, continued the conversation, questioning why someone so powerful and important seemed to have nothing better to do. But Suwon could barely keep up. He just asked for some water, trying to clear his mind, which made his friend even more frustrated with the situation. He focused on pouring the drink, a small gesture to distract himself from the complicated thoughts that plagued him at that moment. That's when his friend exploded, venting about how he was stuck in a stressful contract, feeling like he was going to die from nerves if he continued like that. He complained that the person he was guiding stayed home all day, acting like he was unemployed, to the point that he doubted the frustration with the guy he was guiding was clear. While he vented, his friend just listened patiently, already seeming used to that kind of complaint. The frustration was so great that the words simply disappeared. All the effort to guide that guy seemed to have been in vain, and the feeling of helplessness finally overwhelmed him completely. And that was the usual routine. While he tried to maintain his composure, the memory of Suwon's chaotic behavior was a constant. Dealing with it every day had long exhausted his patience. Bothered by those memories, he needed a moment to compose himself. A simple gesture, but one that carried all the weight of his internal frustration, which he tried so hard to hide. But the memories didn't give him a break. The frustration became so overwhelming that he could barely breathe, completely losing control over his own reactions, his own mind. At that instant, the barrier separating the past from the present broke, and he was forced to relive the worst moment of his life, feeling everything again. But back in the present, reality was different. Amidst the drink and the noise, the young man vented all his frustration in an explosive laugh, while his companion just watched the scene with particular interest. The euphoria, however, vanished as quickly as it came. The laughter gave way to a deep weariness, and he just shook his head, as if trying to convince himself that none of it was real. Suddenly, the exhaustion turned into pure indignation. He refused to accept what was happening, desperately trying to make them listen to him. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the young master was finalizing his commitments, maintaining a calm and controlled appearance, despite the thoughts that consumed him. He received congratulations for another successful project. His superiors made it clear that expectations of him were very high, as always. The older executives commented that they could no longer keep up with the sharp vision of the younger ones, praising his ability in a somewhat exaggerated way. With a professional smile, the young master thanked them for their support, attributing all the credit for the success to them, perfectly playing his role. The conversation continued with the exchange of pleasantries and compliments, a corporate dance that he already knew by heart. However, when they invited him to continue the night somewhere else, he politely declined the offer. With a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the young man said goodbye, preferring to go his own way. He walked away, leaving the two men behind, who said goodbye in a somewhat hasty manner. But as soon as the young master turned his back, the masks fell. The expressions of admiration were replaced by pure shock and contempt. One of them commented on how difficult it must be for the boy to play the role of heir, and the other warned him to be careful with his words. After all, he was the only survivor of that accident. Little did they know that, from a distance, the young master himself wondered what the point was of having survived if he felt completely empty inside. He continued his walk, carrying the weight of a past that no one there really understood, until a specific thought changed his expression, a memory of someone who could break his melancholy, bringing a slight smile to his face. And that memory led him directly to Suwon. He found him completely drunk, but with a smile so genuine and happy that it was contagious. The young master supported Suwon, who clung to him without hesitation. At that moment, in the middle of the street, the emptiness he felt seemed a little less crushing. The young master was surprised by Suwon's pure and uninhibited joy. It was a reaction he didn't expect, especially from someone who seemed completely drunk. And, in a sudden impulse, Suwon threw himself forward, moved by the emotion of the moment. Only the action was abruptly interrupted. Another person appeared, pulling Suwon by the hood and pulling him away from the young master. The newcomer, a man with silver hair, questioned why Suwon was in that deplorable state, explaining that he smelled the alcohol from afar and came to check. Suwon, in turn, could barely process what was happening around him. He was completely lost. The situation quickly became comical. The man held Suwon in the air by the hood, while the young man struggled unsuccessfully. In the distance, the young master just watched the chaotic scene unfold, while Suwon yelled for him to be released. The silver-haired man tried to calm the situation, saying that he just wanted to take Suwon home because he was too drunk, and that he would leave it to his partner. Seeing that struggling was no use, Suwon resorted to a more primitive tactic. He simply bit the shoulder of the man holding him. With Suwon still hanging on him, the man turned and finally noticed the young master approaching, who called him over to understand what was happening. But instead of being angry, the young master seemed amused by the confusion. A slight smile formed on his face. Without wasting time with words, he acted. The young master simply picked Suwon up in his arms, and with a quick movement, he threw the young man over his shoulder, silencing any protest with the pure surprise of the action. With the situation resolved in his own way, he started walking, taking Suwon away from there. While being carried, Suwon grumbled, wondering why that man always treated him that way, ruining all his plans. The shame of the previous day was still fresh. Suwon couldn't get the pitiful scenes he starred in out of his head, completely out of it. He felt like a complete idiot. How could he have lost control like that in front of everyone? With each memory, he wanted to dig a hole and hide. But amidst the shame, a doubt began to arise. Something about that night didn't make any sense. He remembered how he was taken away. After being carried by the young master, he woke up in a totally unexpected place. A luxurious residence, very different from anywhere he had ever seen. The young master put him in bed and sighed, relieved to have finally controlled the situation. Suwon, in turn, was already completely passed out. The smell of alcohol impregnated in his clothes was proof of the chaotic night. The young master just wanted to get rid of that smell and forget what happened. Later, talking to a friend, Suwon heard the missing perspective. His friend reminded him of a crucial detail. The young master was an S-class, someone of immense power. With a single blow, he could have finished Suwon off. So, the big question remained. Why did he just stand there putting up with everything? Suwon's friend had a theory, but the answer could change everything.